welcome to another bout of unboxing. First for a little while, actually. Good to be returning to the ring. My sparring partner today is Nick Donnelly. Nick, another Donnelly. We've had Chris Donnelly, Nick's brother, beforehand. Nick is the founder and CEO of WorkClub, an app that gives remote workers access to on-demand hot desks, day offices, and meeting rooms across the UK. Very interested to chat to Nick today a bit about his backstory and also his perspective on how the future of the workplace could unfold. Nick, great to have you in the ring.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. Are you based out in America or UK at the moment?
We are based wherever we can find Wi-Fi. So we've decided we got out of the UK a while back because it was with a baby and a small flat in London, it was just getting a bit chaotic, and with a lack of nurseries open, play centres open, there's not a lot of places that we could have taken Scarlett, and we felt that was putting her at a slight disadvantage by not getting out there, not meeting other kids. So my wife's American. We took the opportunity to come out here a while back, and thank goodness we did. And we will be back at some point.
So I was going to ask just on that, like, it's interesting, the whole London and sort of being in a bit of a cupboard, because it's sort of conventional wisdom to think that, once you've sort of done uni and you're going to make it with your career, you're going to kind of live in London. But I think I've experienced living in London and it being kind of quite tight for space. So it's almost like that dogma of like London has to be the place to be if you want to make it is actually up for question now a bit more.
I mean, I love London. I love that city, and I think it's an incredible place to start a business, and it's an incredible place to live. The reason we can all work from wherever we work best is because of what's happened. The pandemic has forced us all to think differently about how we approach work and how we approach life along with that. And I think the pandemic has made people realize that there are a lot of other things that they were potentially missing out on, maybe taking the kids to school in the morning, maybe looking after their wellness a bit better by going to the gym or whatnot. People have realized that there are these advantages that if they weren't commuting every day back and forth, that they could fit these things into their life a bit more. And that means that if you're not going to the office every day, why would you need to be in central London anymore? I mean, central London is a great place to be, but it's expensive, it's busy, and it's very crowded when times are normal. When people are doing the commute every day, it's a very tough place to be every single day. And I did that lifestyle for probably like 15 years, day in day out, going into Old Street, and it wore me down. I didn't realize it was wearing me down because it was just so normal for me and everyone else. It was kind of programmed into us to do that, but yeah, it was exhausting. And just taking a step back from that and realizing all the benefits that you can get from not using that time to get in the morning and all that time to speak to your colleagues and gossip and all, take that all away, it frees up so much. And now I think people are going to start looking outside London, outside the big cities, so that they can have a bit more flexibility with their lives. And it's amazing now, and it changes everything. It changes the way you potentially base yourself, where your kids go to school, how you move from A to B. And I think a lot of businesses and a lot of services are going to have to mold their products around this new style of living and working. Yeah. So it's definitely opened up a lot of doors.
It has. Yeah. It's actually amazing to think that, like, before the pandemic, it would be totally normal to spend, 3 hours on a train every day, or say totally normal, that is quite a long commute, but do meetings.
Normal.
Yeah, do meetings in Australia, just one day meeting and then come back. I think all of those things are now up for question, and I think it's really good from the standpoint of an efficiency point of things, which is, I guess, where platforms like yours come in. But for me, I think London, I'm in agreement with you. Like, I think London and cities are really, like, they'll still have their appeal and they'll still have their pull, but it's just, you don't have to maybe spend every single day going there. Like, maybe it's just
the way people use the office as well. A lot of employers will continue to have that central office and have some sort of expectation that employees come in 1 day or 2 days a week, but you're going to see different age groups coming in on different days. So what we predict is that a lot of the, I guess, older generation, but I guess 35 upwards will start to probably come in early in the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, because they want to spend towards the end of the weekend with their families, with their kids, whatever it may be. Whereas the younger individuals, the ones under 35, they would probably use the central office as a kind of a stepping stone to their social life. Then they're in the city center, they can go out in the evening after that. Whereas potentially the early week, they might want to stay at home and work remotely. So we're going to see very different working patterns based on the type of life these employees are going to want to live. But it's going to change a lot of just the approach for everyone, employer and employee.
Yeah, I wanted to actually ask about the generational difference that you brought up there, and like how have you found with your platform that this is an easier sort of transition to make for the younger generation versus an older generation who are maybe a little bit more steeped in tradition of how work has to be?
Yeah, I definitely a lot of the younger generation have adapted much better than the older generation. I think you're going to have a lot of problems if you have, based on the amount of distractions you have at home. So if you do have a partner, hopefully there's enough space for both of you to work in separate spaces. Because if you're on top of each other, that's going to get old really quick. Kids as well, having kids at home constantly, it's just a very different dynamic to deal with if you're used to something else. So. And most of us, I think, who have kids, I've worked in that office environment, and I can get a lot of work done. But the worst part about it for me was the commute, and getting rid of that. I now have been able to save a lot of that time. But for the younger people, I don't think the commute is the problem. I think it's hard to say, but they're adapting to it much easier than the older generation. I think their expectation from now on is that they get that level of flexibility and that level of choice to choose where they work best. Whereas the older generation, there's still an expectation that everything will go back to normal. The office will remain a central part of business, and it will in some way, but the office is going to change drastically over the next few years. It's going to reduce in size. It's going to be used for different purposes than just a desk and a Wi-Fi connection. And for work, it's going to be used more for coming together with your teammates and collaborating, and that social element of work, and also the feeling that there is a place to go to work and be part of your team is, I think, still an important part of the office. But the dynamics are going to change much more over the next few years. And we're going to see the older people taking I want to say older people, but I guess anyone over 40 finding it hard to figure out how they operate in a fully or partially remote working world.
Yeah. Because I think the thing that sort of comes up, which I find interesting, is that I think there's a dogma of that if you're going to just be at home all the time, then how can we know that you're doing the work that we want you to do? Like how can we sort of have our eye watching over you? And I think this is the interesting debate that it's throwing up, in that around sort of, if you're aligned as an employee to the business, it's easier to work from home because you're not sort of doing your work out of fear of your boss sort of looking over your shoulder, metaphorically speaking. But actually you just, want to work, and you'll find wherever you can work from home. Yeah. So for me, the interesting point of conversation is like how this is throwing up more necessity for companies to be aligned with their employees so they actually feel empowered to do the work themselves. So I think it's interesting to see how that'll affect the way that companies are run. I know I've seen a couple of LinkedIn posts, can't remember if it's from yourself, on this topic, but don't know if you had any thoughts.
I think it's definitely it's not a problem yet, but it's something that these employers need to solve, and solve fast. They need to start getting on board with remote working and understand what their employees want from that. And then the employers also need to understand what the employer wants from them. And if it's a two-way street, it's working together hand in hand. And I've never liked the approach where an employer, tells you where you have to be, what hours you need to work by, what seat you need to sit in. It's like telling kids what to do. We're adults. We should be able to tell our boss, the person paying us, where we work best, where we are most efficient. So it's a two-way street, working together. I'm not, I'm no expert in how to make teams work more efficiently remotely, but this is why we're seeing a lot of companies hiring for that specific role, workspace expert, flexible working expert. And these roles are coming up more and more. It's an interesting role. They're very well very well paid roles, because they're such an important part of the business going forward. So I think it's for those of us in this space, it's a great opportunity for someone, or for many people, to evolve their careers into this space, because it's a big thing that companies and employers need to solve. If they get it right, they'll see the benefits immediately. If they get it wrong, they probably won't last very long.
I know, and that's the interesting thing. And I think from the employee perspective as well, it's like, if you've been maybe like half the appeal of a job has actually been sort of the lifestyle benefits of a really nice office or a really nice location in Old Street or something, but the work is just something that they kind of put up with for the lifestyle type thing. I think COVID and being just at home and sitting there doing the work, it sort of puts more of an emphasis on the work specifically that you are doing. And so therefore, it's kind of linking into this whole concept of, unboxing and it being about something that you really enjoy doing and, in line with what you're doing. So it'll be really interesting to see how companies kind of come out of this and whether they'll be able to sort of keep that alignment. I guess it'll be a good natural test of it.
I've started even seeing some companies test the idea of offering a full-time position, but for two people. So it becomes more of a part-time role. Two people take on one full-time role, so that individual has the opportunity to then find another role with some other company.
Interesting.
That salary, where they're mixing up their day-to-day regularly, and there's no. The work's consistent, but it keeps you excited. It keeps you, it means that you're, doing so many different projects. You're never getting bored. You're always motivated. And I love this. I love the idea that we are experimenting with such positions, or that employers are willing to experiment with such positions. So, whenever we get a chance to encourage an employer to do that, we will. But again, this is where the flexible workspace experts or the flexible working experts come into play. This is what they need to set out for an employer when they're looking at how they're going to adapt to work in this new way of work.
Yeah. And it's also interesting obviously we're talking from the perspective of an employer who already has quite a few employees and they have to sort of change their mindset. But for someone maybe more like me, who's very much at the start of my journey in the process of starting new companies, it's quite exciting now, because when you're looking to hire people, there really are no boundaries. Like, you could easily, you can go on Upwork or People Per Hour and find your staff who are just, working from somewhere. I've got a graphic design illustrator helping me do these caricatures who I've never met in person.
Who doesn't have one of those guys?
Exactly. Everyone needs one.
Guys in your back pocket. I've had my guy from Fiverr for literally about 15 years. And he's my designer, and he's like my go-to guy. And he creates like multi-million-pound designs and brands for $5. And he's brilliant. And we get on so well. And he's very happy that I've consistently used him throughout for 15 years now. And he's utterly brilliant, but he's based over in India. He's excellent. And, I've got no boundaries of who I hire and how I hire them. What I look at is I've got work to be done. I've got certain tasks that I need help on, and then I dish them out. And it's never, I try and keep it as simple as possible. I'm probably too simple in my approach, but it seems to work for those involved. Yeah.
It's almost like the really technical work that doesn't need too much of a kind of understand. Say if you just write, here's the sketch, you just need it turned into a design. It's very like technical work. Or here's a podcast, just take out the ums and cut the gaps. Like that can be outsourced so easily. So like through these companies like Fiverr. So I think sort of here in the UK, like technical, there's less of an emphasis on technical skills and more on kind of skills like creativity, sort of leadership, different kinds of skills that I think is also an interesting trend. But yeah, we sort of taken it off on a slight tangent there, but when I'm looking to hire, it's just interesting because, it could be as easily someone that I employ from Surrey, or it could be from South Africa, and it doesn't really make too much difference, except the person in South Africa, you're going to probably have to pay a lot less. So
maybe, yeah. But it's at the end of the day, we've got so many resources out there that we can use. that as a startup, we're going to obviously look at cost is always going to play a huge factor in any kind of development work, creative work. And if those options are available, then as long as you are doing right for the person that you're working with, then all is well. I think it's going to get even with design now. I mean, there's so many tools out there that make designing for me really easy.
Yeah,
having Google Drawings, I can do a lot of work through that quite easily, and I'm usually quite amazed that I can do the work through these tools.
Yeah.
And even Umar goes to me, gosh, I'm going to lose you. I'm going to lose business because of Google Drawings. But yeah, there's just so much available out there that you can pick and choose what you do and how you do it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's it's amazing what you can now do.
Mind that I tell the fact that Chris doing his thing with Chris and Will with Lottie and what he does with Verb, it blows my dad's mind that we are able to achieve this without really even shaking hands with these people that we work with.
Yeah,
it's a different world.
It's incredible. Well, as you bring it up, I did want to just sort of retrace a little bit back to your backstory, and obviously it's quite funny. So you're the second Donnelly I've had on the podcast, and you've also got another brother who was in my year at university, who's also entrepreneurial. So you're obviously from a very entrepreneurial family. Where did it sort of start off for you in terms of having an entrepreneurial spark and potentially sort of starting your own things?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Like, my dad runs his own business, so I think growing up, we were very fortunate to spend a lot of time with our parents and do a lot of holidays and doing these very extended holidays of like 1 month, 2 months in the US, where we'd rent a property and just spend our time out there. My dad would work remotely, and I think just growing up with that, knowing that he had complete control over his schedule and how he ran his business, I think we took a lot of inspiration from that, to have that level of control in our lives. And also going through the Wellington system, they teach you a lot about they make you very confident. They make you believe in yourself. And I think that was always at the back of my mind, that at some point in my career, I was going to spin off and do my own thing. And I'd already been doing my own thing part-time and in college as well. So it wasn't anything new. I mean, if you go all the way back, I probably shouldn't mention some things on podcasts, but like if you go all the way back to school, even when I was like 10 years old, I was creating little games on floppy disks. And during my break, when everyone else is playing in the playground, there's me upstairs with one of the nerds going, well, I wanted to do this, this, and this, and they'd make it for me, and I'd sell these floppy disks on the playground. And it was simply like a PowerPoint presentation. You'd click through the game and you get to the exit, and if you either win or lose. And so this idea of creating stuff was always something I do, and I did it at boarding school to make money, and then I did it at after boarding school, and it's always just to make a little bit of money on the side, whether it be selling stuff or buying old computer what are they called, the computer machines, the big boxes, and pulling out all the bits and upgrading them and then selling the boxes as a separate thing. We were always doing these things as kids, and I think it's just being able to believe in yourself and then just going after it and wanting that type of lifestyle. I think all of us wanted it. And if one of us does it, the next one's going to do it as well. So the fact that I was doing it, Chris started doing it, then Chris started doing really well, and I started pushing a bit harder. There's always competition between the brothers. Incredibly friendly competition, a lot of banter, but it pushes us all, it drives us all. And then Will all of a sudden's like, well, I've got these ideas as well, and you guys are doing it, I'm gonna go do it now. And my parents laugh. I mean, they just sit back and think it's hilarious, because we're all, creating our own paths and controlling our lives, and we don't follow, the crowd really. So it works, but do we know what we're doing? No, not at all. We just kind of go with it, do what feels right, treat people well, and hopefully find something you do that you love.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's amazing how much this podcast sort of comes back to school days, and you sort of touched on it there with how Wellington made you believe in yourself, which I think is largely what it comes down to when you're starting your own business. Like, it's largely, I believe, down to, do you back yourself to make it work? Because you can't know whether it's going to work out or not at the start. Mm-hmm. So is there anything specific you sort of remember from your Wellington days, and specific that school did, that really allowed or helped you focus on being able to believe in yourself? Or is that just...
I think the whole, being thrown in the deep end a bit with the boarding aspect of, you have to kind of fend for yourself now, without having the support of your mum and dad to, go home to in the evenings and make everything better, and Wellington's first few years, there was an element of bullying, but something that is part of the tradition of the school, and you get used to it and you deal with it in your own way. And for me, it helped me come out stronger on the other end. And I think that the teachers always did a phenomenal job at making you realize that you could do more than what you were doing. And I was never one who'd push myself to the limits to beat everyone. I was very content with just being at my own pace. But always teachers would pull me aside and say, there's a bit more that you can do here, and they would push me in the right direction, support me. And I was saying this to my wife the other day. There was aspects of Wellington that were really difficult to get through, but the one thing that was consistent throughout was the support that the professors, the teachers always gave you. And I think that was, incredible. Really, really helped me definitely get through it, get through all the difficult parts, but also get to the end, graduate with the grades that I did. I was never great with grades. I was getting C's. My parents are incredibly pleased with C's. They're very, very happy that C's get degrees for my parents. But then when Chris and Will came along and were getting A's, they were like, what was wrong with you, Nick? And so thank God I was the oldest kid. But I think the teachers really help build that confidence, but also the friends, the people around you, constantly supporting you when times are tough. And they're your family. They're the ones you rely on. They're your brothers. And they, some of them right even today are my best friends. They're the guys I go to. So an amazing.
It's that support that is, again, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's that support that you can give pupils beyond the grades. Like the grades sort of tick the boxes, but it's actually what's going on beyond that, which I think really matters, which I think schools are focusing more and more on. But I know that Wellington are a bit of a leader in that space.
It was tough going from that to then boarding to a university in the US, because going to university in the US at the age of, I was 20 when I started, so a little bit older. And I'd obviously gone through the whole Wellington experience. And then all of a sudden at 20 years old, I'm thrown into the first year at uni where I'm being told to do all my generals, my sciences, my English, my maths, my everything, my geography, and all. To do all that again, I was quite shocked, and that took me back a bit. And then to have teachers not supporting you, kind of talking down to you, was a very different experience than what I got at Wellington. So for the first few years at university in the US, I really struggled to adapt. Like, it completely flipped. Like, my social life was incredible, my friends were incredible. There's no element of bullying or anything, but then the teachers were just awful because they just didn't know the type of education that I'd been brought up in, and it was a hugely different experience.
Yeah,
I love both of them.
Yeah, that's cool. So just sort of fast forwarding a little bit from there, I was just wondering how you then came to eventually starting WorkClub. Like, were there any key moments? Sort of, did you start off running your own business, or was that something that came later? And then, how did you ultimately get the idea for WorkClub?
So, a bit of a long story. So it started, as I said before, always tinkering with ideas and creating new things throughout my life. And then running a marketing agency up until I went to university in Minnesota. While I was in Minnesota, I built an app called Sniff It, which probably a really bad name. I wasn't great at the whole branding thing back then, but it's called Sniff It, and it was about sniffing out the best deals in the town. And we promoted it to the student population, did really well, learned a lot from that. Came back to the UK after graduating, thinking I want to do this again. Chris and I then started a business together called Real Uni Guide. We raised a little bit of money, family and friends, but also an individual angel. That allowed us to build a good site, but we didn't really realize the opportunity that we had, and it kind of ended up fizzling out. But again, a very good experience, which led then Chris to do Verb. And then I started back in the started in the real estate world, managing vacant buildings where we would use the space to serve people who needed accommodation and also flexible workspace. And this was, such a big hit in London. We would be renting out, jail cells to people who just needed them for like work purposes, and it was wild because people would literally take anything that we had available if it was at the right price. And for us, it was a security deterrent. It prevented the building from being squatted or broken in, or maybe an illegal rave happening. And it also brought us income while the landlord had a building that was 100% secure for free. So their business rates were reduced and they didn't have to pay a penny on security. So it was a really good deal for both sides. And that idea of flexible, affordable workspace really started at that point. And even on my Instagram, you can see back in 2013 that I was posting pictures of me sitting in a pub at like 9 a.m. with my breakfast, my laptop, and a pint, going, "This should be every day." And my Will actually sent me that picture and goes, "Oh, WorkClub was meant to be, mate." And I was like, I knew it back then. I should have started it earlier, but anyway. And so I had the idea of flexible workspace, then was going to go off and do the business at that point. But Hubble, which is a UK startup, they serve the flex market space as well. They hired me as their head of commercial property. I spent just under 2 years with them. Absolutely loved my time with them. But I think what drove me crazy towards the end was their lack of ambition to get the product nationwide. They had the best product on the market. I still think they do have the best product on the market, but they're not across the country yet. And for me, that it always felt like I was hitting a wall, and because we were getting so much demand from places in Scotland and Wales, in Ireland, but we weren't serving those markets. And so for me, that didn't sit well, and I thought that was the best opportunity to go off and do my own thing. I did, and then get into my marketing agency again. I took that full time, did fairly well in the first 2 years of doing that. And then what happened was I was hit by a car, which ended my chances of really commuting every day back and forth into the city. So I couldn't walk at the time. I'd blown out 3 discs in my spine, and it was agony. So this was really the start of the lockdown period for me, where I just couldn't leave home. So I spent months.
What year was this?
This was 2017.
2017. Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think it was June when I was hit, and then for like 3 months, my marketing agency just deteriorated. It just completely failed because I wasn't able to keep up with the demand, and because I was in a lot of pain. I physically was hurting, but also mentally really hurting, because I had spent so long repairing my back from a previous accident. And all of a sudden I was back to, not even square one, I was in a terrible state. And so that just ultimately failed. But what came from, I guess, the ashes of Make More Media was WorkClub. And how it started was my wife was just very aware of what was going on in my life. And she was like, "Look, you're not enjoying yourself. You don't enjoy working from this flat. We were in a studio flat. You need to get out more. You need to see more people. We need to socialize." And so we started doing that. We started working from our local pub, a local hotel, and my wife, being my wife, started to notice other people doing the same thing. We started to introduce ourselves to them. That eventually became an event that we set up on every day, called the Workers Club. And the Workers Club evolved into multiple spaces, more people, and then it kind of clicked with us that it could be a tech solution. We shortened the name to WorkClub. We built technology. We built a piece of technology, and then I think it was 2018 is when we transitioned to a tech business, away from just being this Workers Club event.
Yep.
And then the rest kind of happened.
Love it.
Yeah.
Very interesting to hear the backstory of that, and how, specifically how it started off as just a group of people working together, which is, funnily enough, now what I'm looking to do. And so it's almost like you're proliferating that being able to happen, right?
At its foundation, it's still about getting people together in a space so that they can work amongst each other. It's no good you sitting next to a person who's drinking a pint and having a lunch. Yeah. It's better if you're sitting next to someone also with a laptop, heads down or not. It's good to have that kind of environment, and that actually helps you as a person work better, more productively, if other people are doing the same thing around you, or you have total peace and quiet. But this is why we don't just bring on every single venue that approaches us. We look at their offering, the environment, the space, the facilities, the deals that they can potentially put together, the hours, when they're busy, when they're not, and if it all fits, then they become a WorkClub venue. And I think the hardest part of the business right now, I know you didn't ask, but I'm just kind of leading into it, is making sure that the venues are providing not a dining experience, but are providing a workspace experience. And that is I think always going to be the biggest challenge, because front of house staff are only there to do one job and one job only. They're not hugely heavily involved in doing that job. They're probably going to move on multiple times in their career, doing potentially the same thing or something else. I don't know, but just making sure that they are aware of the product and how to serve the customer is always going to be the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah. And have you found any good like the best strategies for that? Yeah.
No, because we just coming out of a pandemic.
Haven't been able to test too much.
Yeah, we haven't really. I think the hardest part for most of the partners that we work with is hiring staff right now. Is hiring enough people to actually manage these types of operations, these types of services. So still, it's a big old experiment every day.
Yeah, completely. So what, just if you could kind of outline just very quickly, like what is the vision really for WorkClub in terms of like how you would like to see it expanding, and how, you know, as a kind of end vision, if you like, what you'd hope it looked like?
Just want it to be a tool that helps you get work done. At the end of the day, get your life in order in terms of like where you're working on a daily basis, or maybe the whole week, depends on your schedule. But I just want to be able to support people when they need that support, finding space that suits them, but also beyond that, connecting them with services that will again just improve their lifestyle. So if we find that someone like yourself would like, I don't know, you enjoy fitness and you potentially like yoga and Pilates or whatever it may be, you know, we want to be able to find those opportunities for you in your working week, and we want to optimize your week by saying, you know, you turn your phone on the Sunday, and from Monday to Friday, your entire week is organized for you based on your likes, your dislikes, your meetings, who you need to meet. And so it becomes essentially a very powerful organizer in your back pockets. And that's where we want to take this. It's not as much as we're not trying to be a prop tech marketplace, even though we've kind of naturally fallen into that category right now. We really want to be more like a lifestyle management tool where we're helping individuals optimize their week to get the most out of their week.
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds really good. And what's like the main sort of challenge at the moment? I know you were doing a raise of some sort. Are you sort of still in the process of that, or where's the next 6 months looking like?
I mean, it's all around product development mostly. We are trying to make the product as good as it can be for the users, and we're getting a lot of users coming through the doors and trying out our new features, which is great. Finally, we've been waiting a long time for this. And so I think the biggest challenge for us, the most focus is going to be on evolving that product to suit different types of users, individuals, whether they are part of a team or not, or teams as a whole. Fundraising side of things, we didn't close our Crowdcube raise. We were 8% short, so that we were slightly short of our target. But we've taken those who have expressed interest in investing, and we're raising a smaller round, but that's about to close, which is fairly exciting. You know, there's still a lot of paperwork and legals that need to be completed, but we're slowly getting there. But fundraising is always a tough thing to work on, especially when you're also trying to grow the business. And with everything opening up, we've only got a limited amount of time to really get the best product out there. The lockdown has been extended, so that's given us a little bit of breathing room, but it's also pushed a lot of our sales assumptions back to potentially like Q3 now, away from that original Q2 period. So a lot going on, a lot to try and balance at once. We're also hiring right now, so that's a big thing that's going to take at least for the next 4 months to find the right talent. There's so much talent out there, is what we're finding, both outside of the UK, but also here in the UK. People are being very flexible with their salaries at the moment. So a lot of great talent that potentially we can go out and find. So for me, a lot of things going on. So yeah, there's probably more. And also managing a child and another one. So
exactly. Yeah. I've got a nice little window into the lifestyle at the moment. And are you looking, is it for you, are there no boundaries in terms of, you know, country borders? Is it global, or is it focus on a couple of different markets?
I always think global. I think as big as it potentially could be, and that is in every town, city, and village across the world. But our next stop looks like it could be the United States, could be here. We've got a lot of contacts over here. We've got investors over here that have already invested into the business that could help us scale operations here in the US. So right now, we're very much focused on the UK, but we are having the conversations to allow us to at least experiment in certain cities here in the US. Europe, again, it's naturally kind of we're being pulled that direction because a lot of the partners we currently work with in the UK have a presence in countries across Europe. But I think the biggest problem for us is the language barrier right now, and we don't have the expertise on the team to overcome that quite yet. So America is probably our first international expansion.
Great stuff. Very exciting. And I look forward to using WorkClub myself over the next few months as things open up here in London. Brilliant. Well, before we just dive into the final round, there was one other just sort of isolated question I wanted to ask you. I saw a post on the WorkClub Instagram, I think it was, about 15-minute cities, and just did like a very small bit of research into what they are. But they sound quite interesting in terms of a sort of model that bigger cities could start to take on board. Would you be able to just outline what 15-minute cities are and how they could maybe fit with WorkClub?
The 15-minute city model is it's been around since the 1800s. I mean, this is how Paris was developed.
Okay.
And so, the idea of that is that everything that you need, from work to, your groceries. I sound like in America. Your food, and like pharmacies, everything is built within that 15-minute radius. And I think that's incredibly important going forward now, as we look at more people being remote and not having to go into one single HQ as their main destination of work. People want to be able to live their entire lives within that 15-20-minute bubble. So they don't need to get into a car every time to get down to the stores. So we are pushing heavily on this, and not just us. I mean, a lot of companies and people within the space are pushing for this 15-minute city to be taken more seriously, because that will help many of the high streets across the UK have a bit of a rebirth. And that's what I think we're looking at. We're looking at trying to fill these vacant retail units that are spread across the UK with the services that you and I need from where we live. So we want to see more workspace type buildings, retail within these empty retail units. We want to see more food and drink options, more retail based kind of wellness gyms, yoga studios. You see a great company that I'm a big fan of called Souk Spaces are doing exactly that. So they're taking on empty retail units as a Souk space, and they are renting it out by the hour for small businesses that need a high street presence for maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week, or even 3 hours a day. And it's a great way to open up these empty units and bring services and products to them that people need in those areas. You could have a farmer's market in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon, you could have an estate agent. I mean, genuinely,
pop up unboxing gym, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, absolutely, it could be brilliant. You could have your podcast studio in there in the morning and create a really cool setting. But the opportunities are endless, and now's the time to go after them. And hopefully, we can play a small part in that 15-minute city, as more councils and hopefully local governments take it more seriously. But a long way to go to get to that point.
Great stuff. Very interesting stuff. And I'm very excited for the development of, how we're going to have a mindset around how we work, how we're going to, lead our careers. And I think it's a massive part of unboxing. So been really great to chat about all those things, and definitely going to stay posted with WorkClub.
Sounds good.
Nick, I just wanted to jump into the final round. And first question is what's something that you believe that most people don't, or something that you don't believe that most people do? Second question is, in 5 years' time, how would you like the world to be different?
I would like us to be looking after our planet a bit more seriously. I think coming together or trying our best to come more together as one to work towards improving the environment, I think is a really important factor for all of us, for every single one of us, and for our kids as well. So in 5 years' time, I hope more governments are taking it seriously and doing more joint efforts to clear up the mess that we've caused, putting more pressure on places like China, like the US, like India, to reduce their CO2 footprint massively, because it's currently only going one direction. And I'm a big believer that we still have time to potentially stop or slow it down or stop it. And that, that would be great to see that in 5 years' time, we're doing more to solve that problem.
Yeah. It is actually scary and super exciting how different the world could be in 5 years' time. I just reckon it's going to be ridiculously different.
We'll be on the 30th lockdown probably by then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. God knows what else.
There's
Great stuff.
There's a new movie called, I can't remember actually what it's called, but it's based around COVID. And COVID is just, the variants just kept evolving for like 15, 20 years.
Of course they will. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just
in our minds.
Yeah. It's got completely out of control. And to the point where like governments are completely quarantining people in these big rooms together. And I can't remember the movie's name, but I'm sure a few directors will have fun.
Yeah, I'll look that up, because it's like, if you extrapolate some of the stuff that's sort of going on, like, I don't know, Mason Mount and the Chilwell. I don't know if you heard the England players who got isolated because they spoke to someone.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you extrapolate that, things are going to get very ridiculous very quickly. So,
but then you got the Scottish. I saw watching the Scottish game. They did a replay of the trainer coming into the. Do you see this? Coming into the ripping like the glucose or whatever, the energy bar, and shoving it in his player's mouth, and the player's like, I was like, that's
the same guy.
Yeah. They have not done a good job with their COVID. Everyone else has got their mask on, but you got this one medic shoving into his mouth. Very funny, but I mean, who knows what's going on anymore? I've never been too worried about my personal health when it comes to COVID. My biggest concern is always my family, my mum, my dad, my gran who kind of did pass away after she got the shot. About a month after she got the shot, so that was unfortunate. But they say nothing to do with the vaccine. But I was always worried more about them, not so much myself or my wife or anything. We seem to be okay.
Yeah, no, that I think that's the thing. It comes down to like not wanting to be selfish, doesn't it? It's I'm people, are getting the vaccine not really for themselves. It's more to protect other people. And we could probably have another whole podcast on the logic around that, but I think that's ultimately the decision and why people make it.
Yeah, I just would hate to make someone feel uncomfortable because I'm not wearing a mask. I mean, it's such an easy thing to do. Yeah. A lot of people have such a big problem wearing a mask. I was actually always thinking about wearing a mask before the pandemic. I'm a bit obsessed about kind of clean hands and everything. So
I mean, personally, I think that's completely true. Like, it's a mask, you can wear a mask, that's a small thing to do, but where does actually the line stop? Like, now do a vaccine, now never travel again, now like how long will it be extrapolated for? But before we're like, okay, actually I do care a little bit about what I want to do and freedom as well.
Yeah, very true.
So anyway, we'll get there, and I think maybe we won't get there, but it's interesting, and I won't bore you with that conversation today because we've already spoken for enough. Yeah, no, great stuff. It's been really good to have you, and really enjoyed the final round as well. Finally, everyone who comes in the ring gets a song to play them out of the ring rather than in. So you're going to have to select a favorite track, and it will play you out.
A favorite track? My goodness, what on earth? I don't even know what. I'm gonna have to look at my playlist.
You're as bad as Chris. He was also terrible at this. He had to go on Spotify and pick the last track he listened to.
We're quite similar. I don't know. What is this one? There you go.
What is that called? I've definitely heard it.
It's called "Come Get It, Bay" by Pharrell Williams.
Yeah, we'll have "Come Get It, Bay," which I think has been a really fitting song for our conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, completely right.
Good stuff. Well, thanks a lot, Nick, for juggling your time and your young one and everything. And great to have an hour of your time to chat about things. And look forward to getting it out and chatting soon.
Cheers, Harry. Thank you so much.